Off then. So welcome everybody to the Non-SIT LDSO DIP onboarding webinar. This session is going to be recorded and the slides and content from it will be shared on the Collaboration Basin website as well. We'll move on to what we'll be covering today. So Nicola Farley, who is the qualification and non-SIT LDSO qualification lead for the programme, will be taking us through the overview and timelines of DIP onboarding. And then Rob Goulding, Solutions Architect, will be taking us through the DIP onboarding guidance. As always, we'll have a Q&A at the end of the webinar at about 15 minutes to provide participants the opportunity to engage. I'll go on to the next slide here. So the hashtag you need to use today for the webinar questions is hashtag DIP. There is a lot of content to cover for DIP onboarding guidance. To that end, this deck that you will see on the Collaboration Basin website has all of that content in it. But what that means is that there's, I think, over 50 slides of content to go through. So for the purposes of this webinar today, we're going to highlight the key pieces that we want to bring to your attention to support you with DIP onboarding. But we highly recommend and encourage that participants should be using this guidance as you work through the stages of DIP onboarding in more detail. I'm going to move on to the next slide and hand over to yourself, Nick.
Hi, afternoon everyone. This is a high-level view of the DIP onboarding timelines, which hopefully should be familiar to the RDSOs on the call. So in terms of timelines, we are looking to kick off DIP onboarding at the start of August, with the view of having that completed in advance of QT start, which is the 1st of October. The DIP UIT environment will be made available from the 1st of August. This DIP version will be on the IR7 build. DIP will then be uplifted to IR8 in the last week of August, and therefore the DIP environment available on IR8 will be available from the 2nd of September. Between the 1st of August and the 2nd of September, the DIP portal will be available, which is the portal you'll need to use for onboarding, but you won't be able to have access to APIs and messaging until the DIP environment is available, which means that kind of smoke testing will be post the IRA uplift to DIP. To support parties through DIP onboarding, we're kind of looking to split it up into kind of 3 high-level sections, with a view of kind of giving you some high-level timelines around when you should try and get through those sections, just so you kind of have a view of how you can stay on track with DIP onboarding. The first one is kind of the global sign and registration period, which we're kind of trying to get through by mid-August, and then move into the technical setup, with the view of being able to have that completed for September for us to be able to do smoke testing ahead of QT start date. With these phases, they're kind of guidelines, so parties can go quicker, apart from the smoke testing, which needs to wait until DIP on IR8 is available. But it's kind of there to help you support the process and understand where you should be at a given time. That's all I wanted to cover, unless there's any kind of questions at this point. Caitlin, have I ruined that by saying questions? And there probably isn't yet.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Let's see.
Cool. In that case, I think I'm handing over to Rob.
That's right. Rob, I'm going to come off shared screen so then you can get your screen up.
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. Thanks for your introduction. Just share my screen, everybody. Hang on a sec. It's a one slide deck, but I've taken control because there's lots of slides here. You're going to be hopefully we're through them quickly, but not at speed where you don't get the right information. So I'm happy to take questions, all the way through the all through the presentation, especially if they're just minor questions about the content you see on the screen, but more sort of general questions, if they could wait to the end, that'd be much appreciated. Let's get this up and running. Okay. Bear with me one sec. Get to where I start. Okay, context. So as we all know, the data integration platform is provided by Alexon and developed by Avanade to allow market participants in the electricity market to exchange messages. This onboarding guide follows step-by-step instructions to enable market participants to complete all the required tasks to successfully onboard to the DIP. It is possible to delegate some of these tasks to your third parties, DCPs, DIP connection providers. However, some of the initial onboarding tasks need to be undertaken by a full-time employee of the parent market participant. This, unfortunately, is not an interactive demo. I'm just going to be presenting slides. The program did do a full interactive onboarding demo last year. It's 10 months old, but the content is still really good. David and Richard did a really good job, and there's a link to it there. Or you could just search YouTube for MHHS Programme, and you'll find a whole raft of videos that the program's produced, and this one's on DIP onboarding. A bit of context around the DIP and the type of user roles that are incumbent to it. So there's 4 roles: user admin, certificate admin, message admin, and analytics reader. For the purposes of onboarding, user admin and certificate admin are the two key ones. User admin, all parties start with a user admin. So you'll be given forms by you'll be given forms where you have to, Nicola, have they all been given forms where they need to provide a contact where a user admin is nominated by each organisation? That individual will receive an invitation to join the DIP. And it starts here. So this is the overview of the onboarding from start to finish. We have 6 steps. It looks very complicated. Well, is it complicated? It's not. Once you get your head around it, it's not too complicated, but it's just quite involved. The first 3 steps: user admin, accepting invitation, verifying company details, member management, are all fairly straightforward and undertaken within the DIP itself. And they're undertaken by the user admin, indicated by the blue colour. Once we go into the global sign registration part, that is the most complex part of it, shall we say, and that requires the cert admin. Some of these steps are very technical, as you'll see when we go through the slides, and require different platforms and different expertise as well. Also along the way, as part of that global sign registration part, you'll need a DNS admin. So again, a technical role that many of your companies hopefully will have identified individuals who can undertake that. And if we get time, I may be able to get onto the DIP ID management and message channel setup as well, if we get beyond global sign registration. Next slide. And of course, there's always support and assistance that the program can give your organisations during this process. So you can either contact the LDSO QT mailbox or the DIP mailbox if you have any issues at all during the journey of qualification. But the preparation reminder is, again, you need to have your cert admin details organised. You need to know your company name, a company number, and a brief description of the company, which I guess for the parties doing this onboarding is all very known knowledge. And then you also need to have information regarding your DIP connection provider. And someone else wanted to come in. Yeah, and that they can undertake some of these tasks for you, which I will go into in further detail in the presentation. The next slide is accept user invitation. So the process for onboarding is the market participants user admin will receive an email from the DIP manager informing them to join the DIP. Said Nicola and her team will contact your organisation to receive the name of the user admin. And you'll receive an email which will then take you to have a link to take you to the DIP portal to sign in, and you'll be presented with the DIP. When you first sign into the DIP, you'll need to enable MFA, so you'll need obviously a smartphone with, we all use Microsoft Authenticator, and it will prompt you to set up your authenticator. If, like me, you've damaged your phone regularly, you will have to get Authenticator installed on your new phone, and that's a call to the support team to reinitialize your credentials. But it's all straightforward. Hopefully you've all done that type of activity before with other security requirements from other applications you run in your organizations. The first step you need to do when you sign on to DIP is to verify your company details. Again, it's fairly straightforward. This is the first form you get when you're presented to the DIP. Company name, company description, company number, but all of this will probably be pre-populated, and you'll just need to confirm it. One of the important things you need to do at this stage is create a cert admin. So the member, the user admin needs to come in and create a cert admin, and this is done by clicking on the relevant box here, typing in their name, email address, and also the role that they want them to do. Again, you select multiple roles, but obviously the important one here at this stage is to generate the cert admin user. Section 3, member management. So here, this is the DIP portal. Once you've done the initial onboarding with the verifying your company details, you can see you can select members here, and here you can actually go in and create additional members as well. So rather than doing it on that initial screen, whenever you log in, you can also create members. Here we have the DIP in blue, but I believe in the US environment where you guys are going to be working in, it's going to be yellow. So you can have a nice yellow banner.
Rob, sorry, we've just had a question come through, and I think it might have been related to the certificate admin point, which is, does the certificate admin need to be a full-time employee of the LDSO organisation, or can it be from the IT support partner, or should it be from the DCP? So that's the certificate admin. So
the initial certificate admin who's going to be onboarding and doing the global sign registration needs to be a full-time employee. So but once that global sign registration occurs, then it can be anybody within your organization or your DCP or another party who's trusted by yourselves. But I will go into that when we get onto the DCP registration. No, sorry, not DCP registration, it's the global sign registration part, which I think is coming up fairly soon, actually.
Thank you.
So this is just saying how, the section just says how when users log in, they have to do their MFA with username, password, and this presents the roles they can do. So it is possible to add people from other organisations. However, this does require a call or an email to the DIP support desk, and because their domain needs to be whitelisted against your domain, so their emails address is accepted. So it's more than acceptable, but they can't do the global sign registration, which I will go into in the next phase. I'm on the wrong slide, sorry. Yeah, inviting users from outside your organization, their domain needs to be whitelisted against yours, as I said. So if you've got a DCP, they can easily be added to your domain. Section 4 is the longest and probably the most complicated part of the onboarding process. It's about the global sign registration and API key generation. So just stepping back here, really, just a bit of context around this. Why are we doing all this? And the reason being is the program have requirements around security and non-repudiation. This means all messages that passing through the DIP must be digitally signed and authenticated with API keys, and comms between market participants or their agents to the DIP and vice versa must be secured over an MTLS collection. And digitally signed and MTLS collections are using digital certs. And so the program, on Avanade's recommendation, have used Global Sign as the DIP certificate authority. So when we do an exchange of messages, each market participant is responsible for signing their own message, whether using a DCP or not. So market participants have to have a cert which they can hand off to their DCP if they're using a DCP to sign their messages. DNS needs to be validated by Global Sign and also must belong to the market participant. And the DNS can be market participant's web domain or any other domain associated with their organization. And if using a DCP, the DCP should use their own MTLS certificate for securing a connection, and then use the market participant certificate for signing messages. The respective market participant signing must be used to sign their own messages. And in addition, API keys must be used in message exchange. It must belong to the market participant. I know this all sounds quite involved and quite complex, but these are the requirements that Ofgem laid down on the program. So the global sign registration API key generation, this is divided into 5 steps. Sorry about the steps within the steps, but this is where we are. Global sign registration, API credentials, domain creation, and domain verification. You'll see these 5 steps become clear on the next slide when we take you into what the DIP will show you. Those 5 stages relate to these 5 stages here: the global sign registration, API credentials, etc. The longest one of these is the global sign registration thread. So to start the registration process, you click on the certificates tab on the main screen under your company's profile, and it pops a window up. As it says here, you do not click next. That next button is pushed in about 10 or 12 slides time. First of all, you need to click on this link, which will take you to the global sign registration and verification page. This starts the journey for the global sign verification and registration. Again, it's pretty much how you think it's going to be. It asks some information about you, your company, and yeah, so this is the key information that, as I said, it needs to be the a full-time employee of the parent organization, because Global Sign behind the scenes, they have hooks into databases and the such like that will verify that this member of staff is actually a full-time employee of this company. We've asked how it all works, but it's all a bit smoke and mirrors, but I'm assured it all works. And so this is where this is the key information. But this is the only part of this is effectively a non-technical component of the registration process that could easily be done by a non-technical staff, and you could have another cert admin who is a more technically capable, or has the time as well to do the more complex steps which are coming up in the next few slides. When you start the global sign registration process, you get presented with another 12 steps. So these 12 steps tie into that first step in the 5 stages we saw earlier. This details all the steps that need to be they consider to be undertaken to start the verification process. So once you've submitted the initial details, you'll get a blue tile appear that will say your quotation is ready. So you then have to accept the quotation. It doesn't involve any cost. I'm not sure why it's got money on it, but for some reason it has. It says, please accept the quotation, which is effectively assigning you a sort of a contract with Global Sign. And that will initiate the first part of the process. You approve the quotation, and it's just so that completes the identity profile verification in Global Sign. So that next have to create an identity profile. Again, you create a profile name. This is for SSL, and then you put in your organization names, your county, your town, etc., and then you request to verify the profile. The next stage is the Global Sign verification stage, which can take, it says here, up to 72 hours. I know most of the time it is faster than that, but we do suggest waiting 72 hours for the whole process to complete. It says here, do not proceed until the verification email has been received. Again, I can't stress that strong enough. You need to wait for this part to complete. Obviously, there's a lot of detail here, and I am flying through it. But obviously, these slide decks are available to you for you to digest at your own speed. As I say, the walkthrough on YouTube is very good. David goes through all these steps in a nice, controlled and timely manner, and you can see him clicking through all the different stages. It makes it look so simple. So the next thing you need to do is generate the API credentials. So this is so that when generating the certificates, Global Sign know your identity. So again, I won't step through the detail here, but I just won't read it out. But these are the steps that need to be undertaken. To complete the generating the API credentials, you'll need to create a name, and then at the end you'll get download API key and secret CSV. It's very important. You must here download the secret and the key for navigating away from this page. Otherwise, you'll lose the content, and you have to go through the whole process again. So obviously, where it says these big please notes that are present throughout the slide deck, obviously take note, and things that need to be captured and recorded at certain points along the process. The next part, again, this is where it starts to get pretty technical, is generating API credentials, a PFX certificate. So this is done outside of both the DIP and also outside of the Global Sign site. You have to use a CSR tool. So in examples below, we're using Azure Key Vault, but there are many other tools out there. Your different organizations, if you talk to your security people, I'm sure they're very familiar with these type of activities. Obviously being LDSOs, they've got a lot of security concerns. So again, I won't touch on the detail here, but the steps are there documented. At the end of it, we generate a key. So the next slide. So here we're creating a PFX certificate, and in the tool it will generate the it will generate the key. You need to copy it, because that will then move on to the next phase, where we need to generate the certificate in. We're now back in Azure Key Vault, where the key generated needs to generate the certificate and we need to download that as a PFX file, and that PFX file needs to be uploaded to the DIP. So again, I won't go through the detail and steps, but I'll leave that for you guys to walk through or pass to your prospective certificate admins. Step 2 of the 5 steps that were mentioned earlier, that's step 1 was the longest. So that is the point at which you would have almost finished the global sign validation process. Now we're just generating and using the certs within the DIP. So we return to the DIP to start the next phase. Do you remember you saying the next button is not pressed until 10 slides? We are now 10 slides into the future, where we have to hit next and move on to the API credentials entry. Again, I won't go through the detail here, but it's very well described. As I say, in the presentation as well, David goes through all this. Again, you select on the certificates and you enter the API key and the API secret to generate, and you need to also set the at this stage we need or we do it the next stage, sorry, do the DNS setup just to get the verification of the certificate. Which I'll step on to step 3 and 4, domain creation and verification. So here in the DIP, we are doing the domain verification against the certificate. So here we need a domain admin who can set the domain name text record. If you talk to your domain administrators, they should be familiar with this type of activity. It's just setting a text value in your DNS that global sign can validate your certificate against. And what this step will do, when you hit validate, that will undertake the test, and the validation will either be successful or it will fail. And then if it fails, you need to repeat the process. And if not, if you're still having issues, obviously just contact the support teams and they will be here to help you. Certificate creation. So once it's been validated, again, I won't go into the detail here, but this is to generate an MTLS and signing certificate. This is done in the DIP, and you need to follow the steps on this stage. And again, you must do some DNS. So you need to add the DNS names as well. Again, the steps in here can easily be followed. Can't believe I've got no questions. I'm obviously whizzing through too fast, or I'm going everybody's head. I'm not sure which.
I'll let you know if any more come through, Rob, but we've always got a section at the end as well. We've got about 15 minutes.
Thanks, Caitlin.
No worries.
How are we doing? What slide number I'm on? I'm 43 of 66. So once the cert has been generated, we need to send save the certificate and into the CSR field in the DIP, and then you need to create the certificate, and it needs to be validated. The certificate admin will now check that the certificate is active within the DIP, and again here the advice is in the slide deck. All these steps have been fully tried and tested, and they do work. I've been assured. I haven't done them myself, but I've been assured they do work. At this stage, the final stage of the process of the global sign registration process is to merge the sign certificate with the certificate. Must reopen merge the sign certificate. The final stage of the process must be conducted with the certificate generation tool, i.e. Key Vault or earlier. and this will merge the certificates together, and it will generate a PFX file which is available for MTLS and signing messages to the DIP. And if it's if you're a DCP and you're producing a signing cert, you need to give your this certificate to your DCP, so they can sign the messages on your behalf. More detail around the signing of certs and the whole background around the security models that we use in MHHS, the use of DCPs, etc., can be found in the Code of Connections document, which hopefully you've all seen. But if you need to have a copy, just reach out to the PPC and they can supply you with a version of that. So at this stage, you have successfully onboarded to the DIP. Hopefully that wasn't too fast or too I don't know, too uninformed. But I do suggest getting the slide deck, going through it at your own pace, looking at the YouTube videos as well. It all makes sense. It may seem a bit daunting at first, but plenty of people have onboarded to the DIP. There's obviously we had a few initial issues with it, but the process has been ironed out and it should be fairly plain sailing now. Setting up DIP IDs. This is slightly easier territory to deal with. So the way a market participant is set up in the DIP, we have a market participant company. They're identified by their company number. And each company will have one or many MPIDs. So, and we know that LDSOs have 3 different roles as well under each MPID. So in a sort of typical setup, we have a distribution network company, and it would have an MPID of DNO X or what have you, and then it will be allocated 3 DIP IDs. In this case, 25 those 00s, 999, etc., etc. And those DIP IDs don't change once they've been allocated. They belong to that company forever. The link between company and DCP organisations. A DCP org, when it onboards the DIP, onboards under a slightly different guise. It's not too different, but they still have to go through the same onboarding steps with Global Sign to do the company vetting. They request effectively a DCP organisation flag. But once they are a DCP organisation, they can ask for DCP IDs, and these DCP IDs are under the control of their company, and they will need to give each of their clients that they're representing a DCP for each of their DIP IDs. Now, for what we've done for the for you guys in the non-SIT LDSO, we've set up all this data in advance. So all your DIP IDs, DCP IDs have already been pre-allocated. So when you log in and access the DIP for the first time, you'll see all this data set up for you. If you're coming in the R8 version, this where data could be set up by the participant, this wouldn't be the case.
Rob, we've had just one question through on DCPs, which is, would the steps be the same for DCPs to request the MTLS certificate for connectivity with the DIP?
Yes. That's a nice, easy one. Yes. Yeah. So MTLS certificates are the same. So, but basically, the certificates are the same. It's just a cert. But if you're a market participant using a DCP, you need 2 certs. Well, you actually need 1 cert. That's for you to sign the certificates, but your messages need to go over MTLS that belongs to the DCP. So they have 1 cert that they use for MTLS and another cert for signing. They provide the cert for MTLS. They need to go through the onboarding to get that cert. Now, that DCP can use the same MTLS cert for all their clients, because all that is doing is securing the connection, and it's identifying to the DIP who's making that connection. But the message signing cert identifies the contents of the message. So they need to manage all their clients' certificates and associate them with obviously the correct DIP IDs. So where are we? So administering a DIP ID is again the DIP portal is very clear, very concise. It's pretty straightforward. This is the IR7 release. As I say, we're going to get the IR8 release fairly soon. But when you go into a DIP ID, there's three things I wanted to highlight today. Here, when you want to nominate a DCP, which I'll show you on the next screen, is you get this nominate DCP connection provider, because you nominate a DCP effectively on every single DIP ID. The reason why we set it up like this is because we catered for the situation where one market participant may want to use different DCPs for different roles. That's one DCP might provide a supplier service, or one provider might provide a data service. So we wanted that capability where we could split it by role, effectively DIP ID by DIP ID. So that's why it's at this level rather than sort of globally at a market participant level. API keys. So API keys we generate again at DIP ID level. The market participants will need to pass these to their DIP connection provider when exchanging messages as well. This is all described in the COCO again. A thing I failed to mention earlier, because lots of things I probably forgot to talk about, is rotation of keys, rotation of certs. So market participants will need to come in and refresh their keys, refresh their certs. I think it's on an annual basis. So yes, it's a one-off activity doing the onboarding, but you will need to go back there and regenerate the certs and regenerate the API keys and pass them off to your DCPs accordingly. And here again, the add member, I just want to point that out at this stage, because we've nominated a DCP and their domain has been whitelisted, you'll be able to add a member of that DCP organization under this specific DIP ID. You can have members at DIP ID level. So if you nominated it here, they would only be able to manage this DIP ID. They wouldn't be able to manage the other DIP IDs in your estate, unless you obviously put them at the global level or you assign them to those DIP IDs. Next slide.
Sorry, Robert, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, certainly.
We're using a DIP adapter. So would we, as the market participant, still need all of this, and then we'd use the DIP adapter company as a DCP, or do they do the primary DIP connection?
So yeah, so there's mixed terminology. So most adapter services we would call DCPs. So
Okay.
if they we need to find out the boundaries of what roles are actually, if they're actually sending messages on your behalf, then yes, they are a DIP connection provider, because obviously there's different flavors of if they are running and operating the system, or whether they're just providing a service. We can have a conversation outside, and we can provide advice as necessary. But yes,
Great.
they would need to go through the same steps, and yeah, absolutely. So here, I'm not sliding around. Next slide. Yeah, so here is, so when you nominate a DIP connection provider for your for a particular DIP ID, up will pop a box that will say market participant. This will list the DIP connection providers, and also this should really say DCP ID, and then it will present a list of DCPs IDs that you want to allocate. So this is effectively sealing a contract between you and your DIP connection provider. Once you've done this, once you've nominated them, the DIP connection provider in their portal will see your DIP ID appear. If you don't give them full access, because there's two ways a DIP connection provider can actually provide their services. Either you can give them access to your account, but if you don't want to give them access to your account and be a part of your sort of user base, then that's totally possible, because the way you do it is to nominate their DCP ID via this, and this then will then appear in their portal, and they will be able to see it there. But I think you still have to give them explicit access. No, I'm sorry, I was slightly wrong there. You still need to give them explicit access to this DIP ID by adding their individuals as members as well. Sorry, I got that slightly wrong, because it was the other way in a previous release, but we've changed it now. So you do have to explicitly give a DCP member access to this DIP ID channel, them to be able to administer it, because you're going to say, what is the administration activity that they can undertake? I'll just go into that quickly. This is information, it's just showing you, yeah, you put in the organization details. The technical part of it is effectively the message channel setup. So the further detail that they need to do is, when you come onto each DIP ID, you'll get a list of the interfaces that they need to configure. So this is for, I think this is just for a supplier role. Yeah, so they get to see interfaces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and obviously your LDSO roles will see a different suite of interfaces, but you probably have that information already. And then when they come into this screen, this gives them the ability to set up the publication configuration information. So this says the webhooks that they need to the DIP needs to send messages to. This is the most complex part really in the DIP channel configuration. This just provides the URL of your webhook. This can either be done via the user interface, or they can be done programmatically as well. We've got an API that will send off this information as well. So again, depends how your DCP operates. I would personally rather do it via the API than set it in here, but it's really up to them. There's some bonus slides as well. I won't go into these. This is just advice for OpenSSL users. This is about generating certs. Earlier I said about using Azure Key Vault for, I've nearly finished, Caitlin, I've nearly finished. Using Azure Key Vault for generating certs. Again, you can use OpenSSL commands for doing exactly the same. And there's one more slide, I believe. Global sign admins, so they're required. So obviously you don't want to rely just on one individual to manage the global sign login. So as well as having multiple DIP users, we also recommend having multiple global sign admins, and there's an option in there when we log into your global sign account to create new admin users. It's been suggested here you can actually use a shared mailbox as well if you want to, because it doesn't actually require any verification. That's it.
Super. Right on time. Thanks, Rob. We've had one more question come through, which is about DCPs as well. So if DCPs are going to use the MTLS certificate to secure the connection to the DIP, then do LDSOs need to create an MTLS certificate? No,
so it's be a different certs. So the DCP, when they come in to the DIP, they will generate their own MTLS certificate. They don't need to generate a signing certificate. But as a market participant using a DCP, you need to generate your signing certificate and hand that over to the DCP.
Great. We haven't had any other questions come through. Has anyone got any questions they want to submit through the Slido? Could you please explain again the roles on the certificate portal?
The roles on the certificate portal. Where are we with that one? Is that on the global sign portal? I think it's this one. So there's only, so or we go right back to, hang on. That's right at the beginning, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
This one. So this is for the initial onboarding to global sign. So this needs to be this needs to be a full-time employee of the organization. So it doesn't need to be a technical person. So your technical person could be anybody within the organization, but this probably needs to be someone with more responsibility that will appear on feeds that global sign can. I'm not sure how, as I said, I don't know how they work, but it needs to be someone with in a responsible position. Maybe your head of security probably be a good person as any who could do this part, and that just gives global sign effectively a name that they can hook into for when they're doing their verification. But you can create other users within the Atlas portal to do the more of the sort of technical work to generate the keys, etc. Is that right? Is that right? Answer to the question?
Yes. Then we've had another question. So, need support regarding the filling up of the pro forma. Would it be possible to quickly walk through the onboarding pro forma and guide us where DCP information is required?
That's quite straightforward, really. So we don't actually, that is not actually required until once you've onboarded to the DIP. You don't need to do that until step. Hang on, let's go back to this. Go back to the start. Sorry, right. So that information is not actually required until within the DIP. It's not actually required until DIP ID management. Obviously, it needs to be done within the global sign. You need to let your global sign and generate your certs and give them to your DCP. But the DIP doesn't need to know about your DCP until you get to step 5, which is obviously quite a way down the line. It's after your global sign registration process.
And is there, I think the question here as well is sort of what information guide us where, oh, so it's in step 5, fine. Okay. Any other questions?
So, just say please feel free to reach out, because you're not the first people to do this, luckily. So, we've had a whole all the parties engaged in SIT at the moment have gone through the pain that you haven't had to go through, hopefully. They did this towards the back end of last year. And most parties, if you follow the advice, my recommendation is just follow the advice, read through it a couple of times just to make sure you understand the different steps, especially with that complicated global sign registration process, because it may seem I haven't looked at it for about 6 months until I was asked this presentation earlier in the week, and I just thought, oh my god, it is really daunting. But when you actually read it, I have sort of tried to simplify it as well slightly. It does make sense. You just need to just spend an hour or so on it. And as I kind of recommend looking at the YouTube video that was produced by the program at the back end of last year.
We've had another question come through, which is, for qualification, is it the market participant certificate admin who generates the certificate, or can that be done by the DCP certificate admin?
So it needs to be done by the market participant certificate admin. but there's no reason why they can't get, if they've got, it depends on their contract with their DCP. If they want their DCP to effectively become a member of their organisation, they can onboard them to their organisation. Remember, he's saying what slide it was. I think it was member management. It was saying you can onboard into your organisation if the DCP organisation is whitelisted against your domain. That is possible because the domain gets whitelisted automatically. Well, not you tick the box once you've assigned the DCP to a DIP ID, but that's way down the process. It can be done beforehand by sending a support desk ticket into the I forget the address, unfortunately. I think it's support@dataintegrationplatform.co.uk. If you send that email in, they can whitelist the DCP org against your organisation, and then you can ask your DCP to become cert admin in your organisation. But again, just stress that the global sign registration needs to be done by someone in the market participant organisation. That is key.
Had another one come through, which is in the performer, it talks about host name, DNS technical authority, etc. Should we get this from the DCP?
No, that would be it's about your organisation, because the lookup is against your company's domain rather than the DCP domain.
Okay. That's all that we have for the minute. I should say as well that we have the no, we don't. We have the DIP webinar Q&A document, or overall DIP onboarding Q&A document on the collaboration base and on the website, which we can share a link to, which is a pretty extensive document with all of the different Q&A that was asked for the SIT participants that may be helpful to help you find answers in the meantime as well.
Yeah, I'll start with this slide deck we produced today, and the video. I was going to keep on banging about the video. And if those two can't answer your questions, then I think reach out, because there was a lot of information available on the MHS website, but a lot of it, some of it is quite old. I think it needs a bit of a we need to remove some of the legacy information. So some of it is a bit dated. So start with this slide deck, and then reach out if you still have issues.
We've got another 6 minutes, but we haven't had any more questions through. We'll give it another minute or so and see if any others pop up.
Tom's got his hand raised.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I literally just did it as you were speaking, Caitlin. When can we start doing this from? Is it like the 5th of August or something like that? Or can we start doing it now?
Do you want me to take that one? So the DIP environment will be available from the 1st of August, and post that they'll be able to send out the invitations to your user admin. So you'll need that invitation before you can move on to those next steps. So the key information we need between now and then is your user admin, so that the invites can go to the correct person.
Thanks, Nicola.
If there aren't any other questions, we can close it here. Just double checking the Slido again.
So everybody can always reach out. You know, I think that we've probably given them enough information today. It is quite a download. Yeah, just take away and digest the information at your own speed.
Yeah.
And it's quite good just breaking no, we recommend not doing obviously all the tasks in one go, but that global sign, that key global sign, that component 4, that needs to be picked apart and just work through how that's going to be done. It's quite straightforward once you actually do the steps. Everybody's done it so far, so yeah, it's definitely not too daunting.
Super. All right. Well, thanks everybody. You will receive the recording. We'll prepare Q&A off the back of this session, the slides importantly as well. And as Rob says, please do get in touch if you have any queries in the meantime.